Welcome to our tutorial video for Unit R's Lesson 1, Integer Operations. Let's get started. Our first consolidation question asks us to use number lines to determine the values for each problem. So for the first one, we'll start at +5 and we'll add -3. This means we'll be traveling 3 spaces to the left. We'll wind up at +2. In the second example, we'll again start at 5, but this time we're going to subtract a negative. Subtracting a negative is the same thing as adding a positive. So we're going to go to the right 3 spaces and end up at 8. In our third example, we'll start at -5 and we'll add 3. So we're going to go to the right 3 spaces and we'll end up at -2. In our final example, we'll start at -5, but this time we'll travel to the left 3 spaces. We'll end up at -8. To complete these questions using the who, when, and by how much strategies, we can start by creating a scoreboard for the first question. The positive team will have 5. We'll have to simplify those double signs to see that a positive and a negative would become a negative, and that means that the negative team will have 3. So since the positive team has 5 and the negative team has 3, we can see that the positive team will win by 2. In our second question, the positive team will begin with 5. When we simplify the double signs, we'll end up with a positive. So the positive team will also get 3 points. In this case, since the positive team is the only team to show up for the game, the positive team is going to get all of the points. In this case, the answer will be +8. In the third question, the negative team will begin with 5. The positive team will have 3, and so we can see that the negative team will win by 2. In the final question, the negative team will have 5 points, and then the negative team will get 3 more. So again, this time the negative team is the only team to show up to the game, so the negative team will get all 8 points. Question 3 asks us to use number lines to determine the values of the multiplication questions. In the first example, we'll need to represent 5 groups of 2. As we can see, this will end up at +10. The second question, though, will have us have 5 groups of -2. So this time, we're going to end up at -10. In our third example, we can think about this as 2 groups of -5. This means that we will wind up at -10. In our last example, we're going to have -2 groups of -5. Which means that we're going to wind up at +10. This is an example of where we can see illustrated that when we multiply a negative by a negative, we wind up with a positive answer. In question number 3, we saw that all versions of 5 times 2 would give us 10, and we just had to figure out whether it would be a positive or a negative. Same is going to be true here in reverse for question 4. We're going to know that any 10 divided by 2 is going to give us a 5. We're just going to need to think about what type of 5, positive or negative, we're going to get. For the first question, we'll have +10 divided by +2, which will give us +5. In the second, we know that a negative divided by a positive is going to give us a negative, so we'll have -5. In the third example, we'll have -10 divided by -2. Again, we know that a negative divided by a negative is going to give us a positive, so we'll have +5. And finally, we'll have +10 divided by -2. A positive divided by a negative will give us a negative, and it'll be 5. In terms of our rules or facts for adding, subtracting, dividing, and multiplying integers, we know that the rules for multiplying and dividing involve if signs are the same, both positive or both negative, we're going to get a positive answer. If the signs are different, one is negative and one is positive, or vice versa, we're going to get a negative answer. In terms of adding and subtracting, we've seen that if there are double signs, we're going to need to simplify them using the multiplication or division rules. Keep in mind that when two things are next to each other in math, multiplication is implied. So when we have a positive and a negative between two symbols, we know that that's like a positive times the negative, which is going to give us a negative. So we'll use the multiplication and division rules to simplify the double signs. Once we have it in the form a sign, a number, a sign, and number, that's when we can make a scoreboard and we can ask ourselves who won and by how much. The team with the most points will be winning, either positive or negative, and by how much will involve how many points they won by. Don't forget that if only one team shows up, that means that team is going to get all of the points.